NHL news buzz, it's starting to fizzle, and that's why you're tapped right back into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Tuesday edition, rounding up all of the top news affecting your fantasy squad, Leon Draisaitl getting his bag, and a whole lot more. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back inside the lab to the latest edition of your daily source for fantasy hockey news and soon betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Much love, salute, and thank you so much for holding us down and making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3-week trial free of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Let's get to business, my friend. Let's get started on this. When there is big news out of the NHL, you know all season long we're going to be covering it and talking about the fantasy impact. And I think, Mr. Roden, 3 big pieces of news in 48 hours or so. Seth Jarvis, contract. We'll talk about it. Torey Krug, the injury, and we'll talk about this St. Louis Blues team in general. And, of course, the biggest news coming out of the NHL, Leon Draisaitl, soon to be still after this season. 14 million AAV, the highest paid player in the NHL, 112 million. What's your take on this? Draisaitl, upcoming drafts, the Edmonton Oilers. I'm ready to talk hockey, my friends, and this means the puck drop on the season is very close.
It is so close. We couldn't be more excited. Yeah, we did say that we were going to be doing the rest of our top 10 fantasy hockey goaltenders for this Wednesday episode. But because of the big news with Leon Draisaitl and, of course, some other news that we haven't touched on over the last couple of weeks, we figured we'll push that over to Friday's episode. So stay tuned for all of that. But yeah, Leon Draisaitl gets the bag from the Edmonton Oilers. The Toronto Maple Leafs are not the only team anymore paying their top 4 players close to $40 million right now in cap salary. So this is absolutely tremendous for the Edmonton Oilers. It's huge for Leon Draisaitl, the largest contract in NHL history, $112 million over an 8-year span, 14 million AAV. It's absolutely incredible. And honestly, when you look at Leon Draisaitl and the production, the results that he brings to this team and across the NHL, he deserves it. He is now the highest paid player in the NHL. The cap salary continues to grow every single season. We're going to continue to see history, a breaking history with contracts in the NHL. Leon Draisaitl is not going to be the highest paid player for very long.
No,
it's going to get to
teammates' contract is coming up pretty soon.
His teammates' contract is coming up, and he'll be probably the highest paid player in the National Hockey League. So we're going to continue seeing that over years to come as the cap salary continues to grow. I believe it's at 88 million. Or close,
something like that.
Something like that.
Right
At
now,
88, maybe 88.5 million is the cap salary in the National Hockey League. So we're going to continue to see some very high contracts across the league for all of these superstars. So Leon Draisaitl, he more than deserves it. He has 5 seasons in the NHL of over 100 plus points. He's done that 3 consecutive seasons now with 110 back in 2021, followed by 128 points, and then down to 106. This guy is, again, when we talk about durability, creativity, and skill, Leon Draisaitl has it all. He barely misses any games throughout his NHL career so far. Over the last 3 seasons, over the last 4 seasons, he's only missed 5 games. So he's durable, he's big, he's strong, he gets out there. Maybe doesn't not the most physical guy, but he's not afraid. He's not going to step down because he can bring the boom when he wants to. He's a power play juggernaut as well.
Yes.
300 of his 850 career points have come on the power play. You put him over there near the dot, below the goal line. He can score from any angle over there. So the creativity, the skill set that he has shown us over the last 4 seasons, it's incredible to witness. He deserves this money, $14 million a year, $112 million overall. It's incredible.
First of all, realized I said it was Tuesday's episode. This is Wednesday's episode, so I'm doing really well to start, Steele. Not as well as Leon Draisaitl has been. Since the 2018-19 season, Draisaitl, 272 goals. That ranks second in the entire NHL. 371 assists. That ranks third in the entire NHL. 643 points. Good for second since then. Power play goals, Steele, since 2018, 124. Tops in the NHL, and power play points since 2018, 247. That's second in the NHL. Did the research a little bit on this one. That's how good Leon Draisaitl has been. An absolute fantasy dynamo. And you and I already did our first mock draft of the season. He should not be around anywhere after the fourth or fifth pick. I'd be fine with him even being the fourth pick because I think it's going to go this year for the most part. It's got to be McDavid, McKinnon, probably Kucherov, then Matthews, or those are interchangeable, and then likely Leon Draisaitl. He was banged up in the postseason last year. The Stanley Cup final, obviously not his best hockey, but this guy is going to be healthy and ready to go. This is huge for the Edmonton Oilers, right? There was a lot of question marks, real or not so real. I think everyone close to the team had a good feel he was coming back, but after they don't get there again, Steele, look, they were close. They didn't get there. There were questions. Maybe he starts to sniff around. Maybe he's upset a little bit, whatever the narratives were. He's back. He's back long term. Let me hit you with this take, and I want your opinion on it. And then let's get to Seth Jarvis, Torey Krug, the St. Louis Blues. I want to pick your brain there as well. Leon Draisaitl, he gets this money. What are you saying Connor McDavid gets per year? Because if the cap keeps creeping, by the way, you were right, 88 mil. It's going to keep creeping. That man is going to get paid. He's going to get 16 or 17 million. And this Edmonton team has reloaded, Steele, and we haven't really talking about that either. Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, they have to be headed into this season as the Stanley Cup favorites.
Yeah, they really do. And I know, again, the Florida Panthers are pretty much running back the exact same team, minus a couple of pieces on the blue line, which definitely hurts them moving forward. But I would say the Oilers are the strongest and should be the top candidate for the Stanley Cup this upcoming season. It's interesting to see with Connor McDavid's contract coming up in the 2026-27 season. He's got 2 years left at this $12.5 million AAV. It's also interesting to me as well because now that you paid Leon Draisaitl $14 million, what do you expect from Evan Bouchard? What is he going to ask for on his next contract, which comes up next season? He's going to be a restricted free agent after the 2024-25 season, where he's currently making $3.9 million a year. What is he going to ask for? He just had a stepping stone spotlight of a season in the regular season, in the postseason as well. I think Evan Bouchard could get close to probably $10 million as well with the way he's been playing. I would definitely be the one if I was him, I would be asking for close to $10 million. Again, the salary cap's going to continue to go up. So if you're expecting Connor McDavid 2 years from now to be getting, obviously, to be the highest paid NHL player in history at that point, and you're expecting 15, 16, maybe 17 million, what are they even going to try to offer Evan Bouchard? Try and get around these cap constraints. I don't know if Evan Bouchard, depending on what goes on, if he's able to stay, and they're going to have to maneuver the cap around somehow to keep all three of those players, because there's no way you let Evan Bouchard walk either.
Nice piece of business here from Ken Holland, locking down Leon Draisaitl long-term, $112 million bag. Let's see what he can do moving forward with his other big names. But the Oilers are locked and loaded for this season, and they're all in, Steele. They're the oldest team in the NHL. It's
Yes,
win
they
now.
are.
It's a full court press to that cup once again for the Oilers or bust. So this is huge news. He's a top 5 fantasy target. Let's talk about a few more right after the break. Torey Krug, not so much, but the impact on this Blues team, Steele. Let's talk about that. Your boy, Robert Thomas. We're kind of circling back on these teams after we did our NHL-wide breakdown. If you missed any of that, every single team's top 5 targets have been covered all summer long. Smash that 5-star review button. Tap into the channel for all the latest. Tomorrow's episode, we'll be going back to our top 5 goaltender countdown. Mondays, all September long, mock draft Monday, and all of your fantasy draft prep right here. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel on this show. Well, right now we have something a little different for y'all. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure for your second listen, you go enjoy the Locked On NHL Podcast. They provide you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We just got done wrapping up and finishing that conversation of Leon Draisaitl. We're going to touch on the contract of Seth Jarvis later in this episode, but Torey Krug is also big.
Steele, if you don't mind, I do have to jump in and cut you off. I'm super sorry. I'm slipping on today's episode. I totally forgot. Stan Bowman.
Go ahead.
Stan Bowman took over for Ken Holland in the front office in Edmonton. Let me reel it back in. I got Tuesday and Wednesday off. I got the GMs wrong here, but hopefully everything else holds true. Nice piece of business by Stan Bowman. His biggest move, obviously, since replacing Ken Holland. There you go, pal. It's been a long summer. I'm really sorry to cut you off there. I had to try and salvage what was that first segment.
Apology not necessary. It has been a long summer, but we are still getting after it on this fantasy hockey podcast. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, we will touch on Seth Jarvis, massive contract for the Carolina Hurricanes at the end of this episode, but we got to talk about Torey Krug. He will be out for the entire 2024-25 season as he undergoes ankle surgery. Moving forward for the St. Louis Blues team, I think this is a huge piece of news. Honestly, I've said it before, he's not really the biggest standout defenseman fantasy wise. You could definitely pick him up off the waiver wire. You can draft him as your sixth your sixth defenseman or your bench defenseman if you wanted to have a bench defenseman. But for me personally, over the last 3 seasons, I personally have not been a fan of Torey Krug. He's dealt with injuries over the last 3 years. 64 games played, 63 games played. I mean, he still gets it done a little bit offensively, but the peripherals are a little bit to be desired once again with this player. Again, he's more of a pickup off the waiver wire when you need a fill-in for that week, or if the St. Louis Blues have a strong schedule with 4 games or maybe a back-to-back on the weekend. Definitely a guy I would offer or put his name out there, throw his name in the hat as one of those guys to pick up. Personally, I'm staying away from this defenseman, and clearly you're not going to be taking him this season as he won't even be playing.
So the offensive upside was obviously attractive for this player when he was able to stay healthy. And 39 points last year from a blue liner, 162 shots on net with 111 block shots, 64 hits. Nothing to shake a stick at. Deeper formats, you're going to have to get more creative, and Krug would have been a target. However, what I think this really means is his offensive upside is going to now impact a team in the St. Louis Blues that when I was looking at their numbers earlier, I believe this is going to actually hurt them more than we think, especially on the power play, where I know last year they were very average. This is a team that also allowed the 7th most shots against in the league last year, Steele. Let me pull that up at 32 plus shots a game. So they were kind of lucky and saved at a lot of points by Jordan Binnington's pretty solid season. Otherwise, they might not have been sniffing around for that wild card spot. This has wild card bubble team written all over it. And let me just round out the point with the power play, because I thought it was pretty average as well. They actually ran out a worse power play than the San Jose Sharks. They had the 24th best power play in the league, or 7th worst, however you want to look at it. His offensive upside, that's all you were looking at it for from the fantasy side of things for the most part. Some block shots there. Like I said, 111 last year, even in a limited amount of games. This is going to hurt a team that when you look at that blue line, Steele, it's pretty thin. So I know we love Robert Thomas. I know we like, the upside of maybe a bounce back from Jordan Kyrou. Jake Neighbors is interesting. But man, oh man, Justin Faulk, Nick Leddy, Colton Parayko, now Philip Broberg. They might be in real tough to battle in that division and for a wild card spot this year.
I mean, even with Torey Krug in the lineup, I think
Yeah,
this was a team that was bound to miss the playoffs, maybe a bubble wild card team. But even with him, I didn't see them being a postseason caliber or a Stanley Cup,
fair.
contending team. I will say with the Torey Krug injury, him being out for the season, I think this is a great opportunity for Justin Faulk as well to reclaim that number one power play unit time. Because when you go back
Probably, yeah.
to the 2022-23 season where Torey Krug only played 64 games, Justin Faulk was the second man in line. He was actually taken over when Krug was out of the lineup. He played a full 82 games. He had a career high 50 points as well. The peripherals were, I'm loving the peripherals as I'm looking at them right now. 196 shots, 140 blocks with 112 hits. The peripherals really stood out for Justin Faulk in that career season when Torey Krug was out with injury. Now that he's out again for the entire year, Justin Faulk will be the guy on that first power play unit for the most part. He's going to be getting over 22, 23. He's going to be playing some heavy minutes. He's going to get back up to 23 minutes, over 23 minutes of average ice time, which he was down under 22 this past season. But with Torey Krug out, and like you said, looking at the lineup on the blue line, Nick Leddy, Colton Parayko, Philip Broberg, Ryan Suter, those are not guys you want to be quarterbacking that top power play unit. Justin Faulk will be the guy. So he could actually be a defenseman to look at as your fifth or sixth option off the draft board later in the rounds. But again, just looking at that career year from 2 years ago, I'm liking what I'm seeing. So that could definitely be an option for your draft, for your fantasy team this season coming up.
I think if I had to throw one more name out there, just in the the draft prep realm to have in the back of your mind, if you're running out of forward options for a little bit of offensive bump, Pavel Buchnevich got paid. He obviously has that kind of elite upside and offensive flair. He's become a little bit more of a complete player, which obviously helps things, especially when you want him to be out there eating more minutes. Buried behind Robert Thomas as the number one center, but I think he can play I think he's played the wing in his career. I don't want to misquote because
he's got dual eligibility. I know he does. He's done it before.
Yeah, so I like Pavel Buchnevich. Just wanted to throw him out there when we're talking about the Blues.
100%.
A little bit one of those squads though that I think Steele we don't talk a ton about. Not a very sexy team, and the makeup of this roster I think is probably why they're going to be in tough in that division to make the playoffs this year. That's all I really had to say about that. Torey Krug done. We're going to keep bringing you all of the news updates that you need all season long to make sure that you are dominating fantasy leagues. That means draft prep tomorrow, top 5 goalies, giddy up Steele. Let's get there. And you know how much I like talking about my boy Seth. So let's get there.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely giddy with emotion right now that we get to talk about Seth Jarvis and the massive contract that he just signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. He remains a Cane over the next 8 seasons. Again, like Flip said, make sure you're tuning in for Thursday's episode where we continue part 2 of the top 10 fantasy hockey goaltenders for this upcoming season. Continue to hit the subscribe button, and then as well, stay tuned for all the Mondays moving forward. Monday mock drafts when we get into the season, Monday waiver wires. We're getting it all on the Mondays, so make sure you're continuing to subscribe, hit the follow button, and tune into every single episode. Like I said, that's coming up on Thursday, and after the break, we will come back with the news on Seth Jarvis. And thank you so much again for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us. And real quick, before we get to Seth Jarvis again, if you want to be a part of our fantasy hockey listener leagues, whether it's the casual or competitive, continue to DM us on Twitter with your information, name, and email. We'll add you onto the list. You can also find us at Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod on our Instagram account. You can DM us there as well if you're interested. Get us your information. We'll add you onto the list, and we'll have all of this finalized by September 20th so we can then get ready and down into the fantasy hockey draft. Once again, we're looking forward to that this upcoming season. 3rd year doing this with all of our listeners up there. So thank you so much for all the the engagement, the enjoyment, and the participation that we're getting from all of you. I keep spitting out these words right now. Flip,
we're struggling a bit today.
We are struggling a little bit, but Flip, over to you, my friend. Seth Jarvis, your boy, gets a massive contract from the Carolina Hurricanes. 8-year deal, $63.2 million with the $7.9 million per season AAV. He's 22 years old. Going to be
Yes.
23 this upcoming season, but this is absolutely huge for both him and the Carolina Hurricanes. They lock him up. And for Seth Jarvis, again, having a career year, a breakout season, if you will, going from 39 points to 67 points with a 30-plus goal season, massive for the Hurricanes offensively.
Most definitely. Look, Jake Gensel not being back there, I was going to be even higher on Seth Jarvis this season. I would have said breakout candidate again. I think 67 is at the low end of what he will be at in his career. Is that safe to expect this season? Considering he is so young, they lose Gensel, could be growing pains, could be some reduction in offensive output. I know Gensel was only there after the trade deadline, but clearly they would have had a much more potent offensive attack with one of the more effective goal scorers of the last few years up there as well. However, Steele, this kid is one of my favorite players in the game today. And what he did last year was round out his all-around two-way game, taking 115 hits. He is not afraid to mix it up. He plays with an edge. He has a high motor. Everything that you want from a young player, and my favorite attribute of his shot. Sneaky good, great release, lethally accurate, everything you want from a sniper, which he is. However, with confidence will come more shots. 176 this year, down from the year before, and he hits 33 of them. He's going to have confidence. He has one of the best centers on his flank in Sebastian Aho, and they play amazing together. They have chemistry, and now he's locked in long-term. And I really do think, Steele, even with Gensel gone, and I do expect maybe an overall offensive reduction from this team, a squad that, and I'll turn it back over to you before I finish here, a squad that finished 8th in league scoring last year with 277 goals. Seth Jarvis is still going to go up in point total. I'm going to say 75 points, right in that realm. Wouldn't be surprised if it's 80. Maybe I'm just too high on this player. However, he is a stud in the making, and expect to hear a lot from me on him all season long.
I see 70-plus points from Seth Jarvis. So the guy continues to impress all around. He's playing with Sebastian Aho, one of the best centers, young centermen in the league right now as well. And then just playing in that top line again. You're big on Seth Jarvis. I'm huge on Andrei Svechnikov as well. And I know that player has dealt with a few injuries, hasn't been able to stay healthy over the last couple of seasons. Again, he's 24 years old going into this season, hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he's a Banger League beauty regardless too in that realm. Back-to-back 50-plus points. He gets over 140 hits. He can get close to 200 shots when he's on his game. He actually had his highest career shooting percentage, 13.2%. So I think when Seth Jarvis gets the opportunity of continuing to play with both Sebastian Aho, who's just one of those players who just makes everyone better. Two-way forward. He does it at both ends of the ice. He's great in the circle as well. He wins he wins in the offensive zone. He's strong on his stick. He has the goal-scoring touch as well. A guy who's going to get you 80-plus points every single season now. And I think that's massive for Seth Jarvis, who, again, 23 years old. Svechnikov, 24 years old. I mean, I know Sebastian Aho he's 26, but he's leading these younger guys who are just a year or two below him. And that's big news for the Carolina Hurricanes. It's big news for the production of both those players. So I'm with you. Seth Jarvis, 70-plus point season coming up. If Svechnikov can stay healthy and get close to 75 or just get close to 80 games this season, I also see him outperforming his ADP, because I think a lot of fantasy GMs out there will be very scared of picking Svechnikov too early because of that worrisome of him getting injured again. But I'm going to let him drop down the board a little bit. I'm going to wait till closer to the 8th, 9th round maybe is where I think you could probably let him slide to. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in that 7th, but if he can play close to 80 games, I also see Svechnikov, who hasn't done it yet in his career, but he can get up to 70 points as well and be one of those top Banger League beauties, which we'll have to break down that category as well in the month of September.
Most definitely. This Carolina Hurricanes team is intriguing.
It is. I'm confused by them on where I would put them.
It's a bit of an enigma situation for me, Steele. And fantasy aside, if we're just talking about them in the Metro Division, which I think, we can have a discussion about the best divisions in the NHL over the last number of years, but I think de facto last year it had the best team in the league in the Rangers. I think it's been probably the toughest for the last decade or so, in my opinion anyway.
One of the toughest,
And they haven't been able to get out of that, past the second round, seemingly. Maybe they made a conference final, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. However, they have definitely been one of the better teams, at least defensively, very stingy. And look, they lose Pesci. They lose your boy Brady Shea. They have Dmitry Orlov. They bring in Gostisbehere. Jacob Slavin's one of the best underrated defensive defensemen in the game. Sean Walker's in. What I'm trying to say is, along with the players we've talked about up front and a really good goaltending duo and Freddie Anderson and Peter Kochetkov, this team is most definitely going to be in the mix for the top 3 spots in the Metro again. And you can't help but feel then these top pieces, they might not exactly explode every single one of them, but there's going to be value here when you have such a good team on the back end, allowing the forward group to do their thing. However, the bottom 6, little dodgy, and they're going to need to find someone to step up to replace Gensel. However, I can't wait for it all to go down still.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I'm I'm a little confused on where to put them, because in my free time, I've been trying to do some projections where I have all these teams landing in their division. Carolina Hurricanes, it's hard to pinpoint for me because even though, they lose Brett Pesci, they lose Brady Shea, they bring in Sean Walker, they bring in Shane Gostisbehere, they still have Burns and Slavin. So, they're still great defensemen. It's just a different looking Carolina Hurricanes team now. And I think that's what's hard for me to pinpoint, but also looking at the bottom 6, I'm not a fan of how their bottom 6 is shaping out to be right now. William Carrier, Jack Drury's still not there at such a young age. Roslovic is a little bit inconsistent. And then me personally, I have seen some improvement with his game, but having Jesper Kotkaniemi as that second line center right now is not doing it for me, because last season, Kotkaniemi finished with 27 points in 79 games. Maybe this is a player who could have a little bit of a breakout season with this opportunity. It's hard to say, because the year prior, he finished with 43 points in a full 82 games. He was getting just under 15 minutes, but he was still playing in that third center, sometimes second center role. Now he's up in that second center, solidified in my opinion. And it's going to be interesting because he gets down from 43 to 27 points. He was under 13 minutes of average ice time. But being in this opportunity now at 24 years old, I think this could be a breakout season for him. But this is still a guy that he has the opportunity to have a breakout season. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but he has the opportunity to do. I'm not saying go out and draft this player. If you do, it's definitely in the last round of your draft. But look, there's opportunity for this guy to definitely show us what he has.
I'm going to leave the Kotkaniemi one alone. That, though, goes into the main vein here of the question marks that this team has going into the season. Also, the Don Waddell front office situation. Nakash dragged out. Jarvis dragged out right until this point of the year. It hasn't exactly been a clean offseason for this team. That leads to concerns. So they should still be in the playoffs. Fantasy pieces are there. Banking on a guy like Kotkaniemi to carry your second line. I don't even know who Bradley Nadeau is. No offense. But we'll figure it out as the season unfolds, and we'll break it all down for y'all every single Monday through Friday until the Stanley Cup is lifted.
Yeah, 5 days a week, like we said, starting in the month of September, going all the way until the Stanley Cup Finals and into next year's draft. We're going to be breaking it all down for you all season long. So thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, making it your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button. Make sure your second listen, again, is the Locked On NHL Podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, from both Flip and I, we wish you good luck with all of your bets this upcoming season. We're going to be breaking it down. Big time bets coming up back again once the season starts. And again, we shall see you back here again for tomorrow's episode, where we finish off the top 10 fantasy hockey goaltenders in the 2024-25 season.
Peace.